This is Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today we're going to continue to break down the rules for War of the Ring. War of the Ring was released by Eras Games in 2012 and designed by Roberto Di Maglio, Marco Maggi, and Francesco Nepatello. This game supports up to 4 players and takes more than 3 hours to play. Each turn in a game of War of the Ring is divided into 6 game actions. For the first game action, each player recovers their action dice from the previous turn. During the first turn of the game, the Free People's player will take 4 of the blue action dice, and the Shadow player 7 of the red action dice. The remainder of the action dice are set aside to be earned later. Next, each player will draw 1 card from their character event deck, the one with the sword, and 1 card from their strategy event deck, the one with the banner. Second, the Free People's player has the option to declare the location of the Fellowship. The following are some reasons why the Free Peoples might want to do this. If the Fellowship is declared in a city or stronghold of a Free People's nation, that nation is activated on the political track. If the Fellowship reveals themselves in a friendly city or stronghold, they then have the opportunity to heal themselves, as well as change their guide. Third, each player will roll their action dice. Fourth, if the Shadow player rolls an I die result, place those in the Hunt allocation box. Fifth is action resolution. In this phase, each player will take turns conducting actions from the available die results. This makes up the bulk of gameplay and will be the focus of this episode. Sixth is the victory check. Players will refer to the victory point track to see if either side has met the conditions for a military victory. To achieve a military victory, the Free Peoples require 4 victory points and the Shadow 10 victory points. Prior to each player rolling their action dice, the Shadow player may allocate any number of their die to the Hunt box. These die are flipped to the eye symbol and indicate the Shadow's resources focused on locating the ring. If the Free People's player moved the Fellowship in a previous turn, then the Shadow player must allocate at least one of his action die to the Hunt box as an eye. When allocating action die to the Hunt box, the Shadow player is limited by the number of companions in the Fellowship minus the 2 ring bearers. In other words, 7 action dice total. As companions leave the Fellowship, the number of action dice that can be allocated to the Hunt box diminishes as well. Once the players have collected their action dice, they roll them simultaneously to see what the results are. After the Shadow player rolled their dice, any I die results that are rolled are also placed in the Hunt box. Starting with the Free Peoples, players will take turns selecting and playing action dice. They may select any of the action die results that they've rolled. Once they've resolved their action, the next player will take a turn and resolve their action, and so on. For example, first the Free People's player will select one of their action die and play out the result. Next, the Shadow player will select one of their action die and play out the result. If a player has less action dice than their opponent, then they can choose to pass. When one player runs out of action dice, the other player will play through their remaining dice until all are resolved. Now that we understand how the order of play functions, let's look at each of the die results and the actions a player can use during their turn. The first 5 die results are identical in purpose for either the Free Peoples or the Shadow. The die result with the sword is the character action. The banner symbol is the army action. The helmet is the muster action, and the palantir is the event action. The next die result has both a helmet and a banner, so it can be used as an army or a muster action. Finally, each side in the conflict has a unique symbol called a special action. The Free Peoples have a symbol called the Will of the West, and the Shadow have the Eye. A quick note, for illustrative purposes, on this slide I've placed the die results parallel to each other to show the similarities. For the Free People's player on the actual die, the army action result, the flag side, only appears as a combo with the muster symbol. The character action side, the sword, appears twice on the Free People's dice. This is normal for the game, so don't panic if you can't find a flag symbol all by itself on your Free People's dice. Next, let's see how each player takes their turns playing out the action die results they've rolled. The character action die result is themed around individuals in the game. This is the most complex die result in the set and has different uses for each player. To begin learning about this die result, let's discuss options that both players can use. The first of these options allow a player to move one army. An army is considered friendly units in a territory space called a region. Each region can only support 10 elites or regular units. These blue or red plastic miniatures represent much larger forces, while the gray or silver leaders, companions, or minions represent a single individual. Therefore, these individual miniatures never count against the 10 stacking limit of a region space. Since the army movement is being conducted with the character action die, then the army must have a leader attached. Therefore, by spending a character action die, an army with a leader can be moved from one region to an adjacent region. The second option for spending a character action die result is to attack an enemy army. Once again, to use a character action die, a leader must be attached to the army the player wishes to conduct the attack with. We will look at this game's combat system in the next episode of this series. Finally, a player can spend the character action die result to play an event card from their hand. The action die result icon of a sword will match the sword icon on the upper right hand corner of the event card. Remember, the lower half can be used to play the card during combat and does not require a player to spend an action die. The next set of options for using the character action die result is for the Free People's player in regards to the Fellowship. First, and perhaps most importantly, this die result can be spent to progress the Fellowship marker on the Fellowship track. This marker keeps track of the distance in region spaces the Fellowship have traveled while undetected by the shadow. This hidden movement mechanic allows the Fellowship to accrue movement spaces without committing to a particular route on the game board. Once the Free People's player updates the Fellowship track, they place the character action die they spent in the hunt box. Now, whenever the Fellowship moves, it attracts the attention of the Shadow. If the Shadow player has an eye die result in the hunt box, they can then roll a 6-sided die to see if they locate the Fellowship. With only one blue character die in the hunt box, the Shadow player must roll a 6 on their die to locate the Fellowship. When the Fellowship is located, they are revealed. The Fellowship marker is flipped from the ring side to the revealed side. The Free People's player must then move the Fellowship marker on the game board that many spaces to reveal their location. This leads us to the second option for the Free Peoples in regards to the Fellowship. They can spend a character action die to then hide the Fellowship again. For their third option, the Free People's player may also use a character action die to separate a companion or a group of companions from the Fellowship. When this occurs, it becomes necessary to determine where this separated companion figure or figures will appear on the game board. To calculate the distance of separation from the Fellowship marker, move the companion figure or figures a number of spaces from the Fellowship's last known position equal to the number on the Fellowship track plus that individual character's level number. With a group of companions, the character with the highest level takes precedence. For example, if the Free People's player wanted to separate Gandalf and Pippin from the Fellowship, and the Fellowship marker was currently at 3 on the track, then move these figures 3 region spaces out from the Fellowship figure. Then move them an additional 3 spaces for Gandalf's level of 3. The fourth option for the Free Peoples is also related to separated companions. They can then spend a character action die to move these companions. The companion's range of movement in region spaces is determined by that character's level. Once again, in groups of companions, the character with the highest level takes precedence. The shadow player may also move their minion figures with the character action die. Similar to companions, minions can move a number of region spaces equal to their level. However, many of the Shadow's minions have unique movement abilities or limitations. The Mouth of Sauron can move up to 3 regions. Saruman cannot move at all. And the Witch King is actually the 9th Nazgul and can fly anywhere on the board except for regions containing strongholds controlled by the Free Peoples. As I said earlier, this character action die result is the most complex one in the set. So once you master all of the uses for this die result, the others are much simpler, as you'll see in just a moment. The Army action die result gives a player 3 options. For the first option, the player may move 2 separate armies one adjacent region on the game board. Unlike the character action die that requires a leader, an army action die does not require a leader to move army units. For their second option, the player may attack an enemy army in an adjacent region with one of their armies. They may also conduct a siege attack, or if under siege, they may sortie out from their besieged stronghold. For their third option, the player may spend their army action die to play an event card from their hand. However, they may only play event cards with the banner symbol in the upper right-hand corner of the card. The muster action is indicated by the helmet and appears on 2 sides of the action die. When playing an action die for the muster result, a player has up to 4 options. For the first option, a player may spend a muster action die to advance one of their nation's 1 space on the political track. When a nation reaches the at-war status, the second muster option becomes available. With the second muster option, the player may recruit new units to place on the board. Remember, while the Shadow player has an unlimited amount of reinforcements, the Free Peoples player is limited to the number of units remaining in the box after setup. The exact number of remaining reinforcements for each Free Peoples nation can be found on page 16 of the rulebook. When a player spends their muster action die for recruitment, they have a choice. They can recruit 1 elite, or 2 leaders, or 2 regulars, or a leader and a regular. The key rule when recruiting multiple units is that they must be placed in separate friendly or free settlements. For example, if you recruit 2 regulars, you cannot put both of them in the same town. Each unit must be placed in a separate location. The third option for the muster result is that die can be spent to play an event card with the helmet symbol from the player's hand. Remember, this only pertains to the top of the card. The lower half of these cards can be played during combat. The fourth muster option is only available to the Shadow player. The Shadow player may spend the muster action die to recruit a minion. However, to muster a specific Shadow minion, refer to their character card to see the game requirements and effects for bringing them onto the board. The event die result can be used with event cards. Players can spend this die result to draw either 1 event card from their strategy card deck or their character card deck. This die result can also be spent to play a strategy card from their hand. All strategy cards have the Palantir symbol in the upper left-hand corner of the card that indicates this. Also remember that die results are only required to play the top half of the card. The combat section can be played during battle. We've talked about the Shadow player's eye die result several times in the last few episodes. Now let's discuss the Free Peoples special action die. The Free Peoples special die result is called the Will of the West. With this die result, the player has two options. First, Will of the West can be used as a wild die result. This means that just before choosing to play the die result for Will of the West, the Free People's player can change that die result to any other die result and play it for that. Second, the Will of the West die result can be spent to upgrade Strider to Aragorn or Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. To upgrade one of these characters, specific conditions must be met as detailed on their character cards. Now that we've walked through the results for the action die for each side, you should have a better grasp on War of the Ring's more fluid take on the phases of gameplay. Each side must manage these randomized options for their turn, but the system still provides plenty of opportunities to develop strategies without a poor roll breaking the game. This makes War of the Ring an intriguing departure from your typical area control game. This concludes our second episode in the breakdown of the rules of War of the Ring by Ares Games. In the next episode of this series, we will look at the game's combat system. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I also look forward to reading your responses in the comments section. As always, I'm Ben Harsh for Harsh Rules. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.